Conglomerates, known to natural resource investors as the millionaire maker, with a reputable career of being first, striking hard, and pushing the envelope, has raised the bar on cobalt-focused companies. In a concentrated effort, he brought together world-renowned cobalt geologists and executive leadership to create the first leveraged Canadian cobalt-focused company. With flagship projects spanning 2 continents, this company is the first and only one with exploration rights at the queen of cobalt mineral riches, the Congo. Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, and other multinational conglomerates depend on supply for their products, smartphones, laptops, electric cars, jet turbines, and superalloys. Here to share with us the relentless demand for cobalt and the tight situation of the supply chain, which includes child labor and primitive mining conditions, which might collapse and jeopardize supplies even further, is one of the company's major directors. Welcome to the Millionaires Mining Executive Summit. Thanks for joining us today. There's an unstoppable trend in place which is creating enormous supply constraints on certain minerals. The megatrend driving this is urbanization. In the first 120 days of the year, 27 million people have been added to our planet. That's that's births minus deaths. That's 225,000 human beings every day. Most of them choose to reside in urban cities, and pollution is becoming a huge concern. And that's the background driving billionaires like Warren Buffett, Sir Richard Branson, Google founder Larry Page, and Elon Musk, the co-founder of PayPal, to make big bets, actually huge bets, on the electric vehicles market. Bryan with whom Wealth Research Group has a tight relationship with, joins us today. Bryan is well known in the natural resource world because he's been serially successful at building shareholder value. He is a director at First Cobalt, which is quickly becoming the go-to cobalt company, partly since cobalt is not available on any ETFs or future exchanges, but mainly since the company was founded by Bob Cross, also known as the millionaire maker in Vancouver, and they're looking to create maximum leverage to the cobalt insane bull market. Bryan, thanks for joining us today.
Lior, thanks a lot for having me on.
Look, thanks for taking the time here. I want to go back to the fundamentals here. Cobalt has not only shattered a commodities record set 44 years ago when lean hogs rose for 18 straight weeks, and cobalt just did something that has surpassed that. It has gone up straight for more than 23 weeks. What's behind this move? I mean, the price action is starting to resemble the blockbuster years of rare earth minerals in 2008 to 2010. What's going on?
Lior, I think what you hit on early in the interview is exactly what's driving the emergence of this cobalt bull market. You've got urbanization on a massive scale. With that, you have electrification on an incredible scale, and it's just moving along like a freight train. This urbanization and electrification theme is unstoppable. Right now, approximately 49% of cobalt use is in batteries. Now, Benchmark Mineral Intelligence estimates that this will grow to 62% by 2020. And the reason for that is that cobalt is an integral, an essential part of every electric vehicle, every lithium-ion battery being made today. It was recently said, and I think quite succinctly, without cobalt, there is no Tesla. And to me, that hits home on just what an integral part of the world that is shaping up via this electrification theme, urbanization theme, what an integral part of that cobalt is. And given the fact that cobalt demand is rising so rapidly, you would think that supply is catching up, but you've actually seen a tightening of supply. So you have a cobalt deficit. The cobalt deficit is getting worse. And I'm telling you, companies like Tesla, like all of the automakers that rely on cobalt for the electric vehicles, are starting to get very worried, getting very nervous.
Sure. Well, there was an oversupply for many years, but in 2015, we've basically moved to the other side of this equation, and all the stockpiles are draining. And by next year, by 2018, the deficit will be severe. The issue with electric vehicles has always been the cost of the battery. That has basically stopped many consumers from taking action and purchasing an electric vehicle, but that's being considerably reduced. So, it looks like electric vehicles are following what Henry Ford did a century ago, where he tried to make the car a mainstream product by reducing the cost as much as he can. And according to Richard Branson, we'll see nothing but electric cars on the roads by 2030. So the fact is, the more you get the price of electric vehicles down, the more they become mainstream, the more cobalt we're going to use. What's the forecast demand for cobalt? I mean, like many modern minerals, it seems that it went from obscurity to essentialness.
You're absolutely right, Lior. And within 5 to 10 years, at the current rate of advancement, electric vehicle drivetrains are going to be competitive with combustion engines. And when you mention Richard Branson's comments, I think that he is spot on. This is a trend that's continuing. And when you think about that from a cobalt perspective, when Richard Branson talks about every vehicle on the road being an electric vehicle, that means that every vehicle on planet Earth will have cobalt within it. Think about how incredibly powerful that is on the demand side of the equation for cobalt. So we've seen this incredible surge in demand, and that's just picking up rapidity. It's picking up pace. That demand side of the equation, so powerful, can drive the price of cobalt higher on its own. But on the other side of the equation, you also have a lot of difficulty around the supply chain. In fact, it was just recently noted in an Amnesty International report that 16 multinational brands that we all know of use cobalt from mines where child labor occurs. And this is completely unacceptable. So when you see companies like First Cobalt, North American companies operating to the highest standards in terms of community, health, safety, environment, not only is demand growing and supply challenges are abundant, but these big multinational users of cobalt, Apple, Tesla, Samsung, Nokia, etc., are also increasingly demanding to know that their cobalt comes from sustainably and ethically sourced origins. And that's where North American companies like First Cobalt have a big advantage, because we will operate all over the world in multiple jurisdictions, but we will operate to a standard that many other operators simply don't adhere to. And that's a big competitive advantage for First Cobalt and other North American companies.
Well, let's touch on the supply side here. The demand is obviously there, and we're not even tapping into the Asian market yet, where electric cars are most needed due to pollution. To investors looking for the profitability here, they've turned to lithium at first, obviously because the name is lithium-ion batteries. But doing a little research would obviously bring up the fact that there's abundant lithium mines, and more of them are popping up everywhere. With cobalt, only 2% is mined directly. And, as we unveiled, a wealth research group, Congo, and like you mentioned, this African country, which is the dominant miner with over 50%, actually it's more than 60% of the world's supply, has a blood mining culture. Blood mining simply means child labor and insufficient tools, primitive security. It goes on and on. International organizations are clamoring down on Apple, Tesla, and other major cobalt buyers to basically make sure that where they source their cobalt comes from an ethical source. Now, obviously, and this is important to understand, only about 30% of Congo's supplies actually come from these remote, unethical mines. So there are legitimate companies there. There is a rich mineral grounds to explore and drill and mine. But the fact is that about 30% of 60%, which is about 20% of the world's supply, comes from it comes from 21st century slavery, basically. How is this company, the company that you're involved with, understanding and reacting to the supply shortage, and perhaps a supply nightmare for some of these companies?
There is a supply nightmare looming for some of these end users of cobalt. You've mentioned a few of the big multinational firms that need cobalt, where cobalt is essential for their growth and their unveiling of new products. You've mentioned Tesla, you've mentioned Apple, you've mentioned Samsung, and these companies all need cobalt. It's a fact, and the fact is supply is getting tougher and tougher. First Cobalt has an excellent project in Canada, the Keeley Frontier Mine. It's a former producing cobalt mine, and we have that project, and this puts us head and shoulders above many of the other cobalt players in the space. So we have a great North American portfolio of cobalt projects. At the same time, as we've just announced, we now have 7 prospective copper cobalt projects covering 190 square kilometers in the DRC. This transaction that we've just announced represents a low-risk entry point into the world's leading cobalt jurisdiction. It's a big, big property, and the transaction allows First Cobalt to firmly establish a presence in one of the richest mining camps in the entire world. And I'll repeat that because the importance can't be overstated. We now have a presence in one of the richest mining camps in the world. And how did we obtain this entry that's really going to become, I believe, the envy of the industry? We obtained it because of the quality of the team. You mentioned Bob Cross, one of the founders of First Cobalt. Bob is also the chairman of B2 Gold, a $3 billion plus company. Trent Mell is the CEO of First Cobalt. Trent is an M&A expert, was the previous president and CEO of Falco, also has a whole lot of industry experience, including time spent at Barrick, at Sherritt. We have Dr. Frank Santaguida, who is an expert, a renowned cobalt expert. He was the principal geologist for First Quantum, overseeing exploration in the African Copper Belt, where you see multiple world-class cobalt copper situations, and he discovered copper cobalt prospects in the DRC. So we've now firmly established ourselves as major players in the major belt, in the major country that cobalt comes from. At the same time, we have a diversified package of properties in North America. So the property potential that we have, I believe, is really second to none. That's a testament to Trent Mell. It's a testament to Bob Cross, Dr. Santaguida, and the team that we have put this together, giving investors exposure to big pure play cobalt opportunities in multiple jurisdictions.
So this is big news because up until now, First Cobalt, which is a newly traded company on the TSX Venture and on the OTC side, had the principal project in an area suitably called Cobalt and Silver Center, and you can please touch on that, because I understand that area between 1908 and 1965 was a bonanza for cobalt, and it was a very rich silver area. So you basically bought past producing mines there, which obviously means the mineralization is already there. What's the plan for the Canadian side, and then what's the plan and what's the strategy with the company going into the Congo now?
Right now, with this big, diverse land package in North America, in DRC, we have the opportunity to rapidly advance. We're already at a point where we have a big head start against many of our competitors. You mentioned the Keeley Frontier mine, past producing mine that we own in Canada. This was a cobalt producer. It was a silver producer. We're in the DRC, where, of course, you'll see cobalt associated with copper. You'll see cobalt as a co-product, as a byproduct, as a primary product in different operations within that belt. Our plan going forward is to advance concurrently the Canadian portfolio that we have, and this is one of the most, if not the most, advanced situation in Canada amongst the small cap cobalt players. This is a past producing mine where significant infrastructure existed. There was significant investment. So we have a very advanced stage cobalt situation in North America. At the same time, we'll be in the DRC, in the heart of the world's richest cobalt belt, advancing projects there. And today's news is huge news. It constitutes First Cobalt tying up 7 different assets within this belt, within one of the world's most important mining belts, and definitely the most important cobalt belt. We have the team to do it. We have a lot of expertise in this belt, a lot of success amongst team members in the DRC, some huge success amongst the team members in Canada, in that part of the world. So it's very exciting, and this was a big transformational day for the company. There's no doubt about that.
Sure. So basically, you've basically changed the, I would say you've changed the risk ratio with this company today, with this news, because now you're diversified in 2 locations. You're at the heart of the cobalt, at the heart of the cobalt mining industry in Congo with 7 properties. You're also in North America, where Elon Musk said, look, I'm going to source all my cobalt from North America. Obviously, that cannot be the case right now because there's so little active producing mines in North America. So with that regard, you're obviously personally made the effort to stake your ground and get involved with this company as a director. Your reputation, your own funds are locked with First Cobalt. What is the what is the situation with the people that put this deal together, and your commitment to the company? How much skin is in the game at this point? People are looking to make sure that they align themselves with a company that is, the shareholders and the founders and the people directing the company are on the same boat.
For sure. That was really well said, Lior. The fact is that in so many of these situations, you don't necessarily see management, founders aligned with shareholders. In First Cobalt, you most definitely see that. Bob Cross, who is a co-founder on this situation, has a big personal investment, time and money in advancing First Cobalt. Trent Mell, the CEO, it's very interesting to note, Leo, we have a tight share structure, 44 million shares out. That gives us a market cap of less than $40 million. So your listeners are hearing about this situation very early. On the last private placement, a $6 million private placement that some very acute and intelligent institutional investors took part in, I would note that one of the larger placees on that, 520,000 shares, in fact, were purchased by Trent Mell, First Cobalt's CEO. And that's big skin in the game. Essentially, all of Trent's upside in this, and Trent has had a distinguished career. Barrick, Sherritt, the former president and head of mining at Pear Tree Securities. Trent has had a very distinguished career, and his upside in First Cobalt is only via the growth in shareholder value. When you have your CEO purchasing 520,000 shares in the last private placement, the last funding that the company did, I just think there cannot be a better indication as to management skin in the game.
Now, Bryan, let me kind of step back here and take a look at what the company's doing. The price of cobalt is exploding. It has gone up more than 150%, and because cobalt is primarily mined only 2% of the time, there aren't many pure cobalt-focused leverage companies, and it looks like what you're doing is you're accumulating and acquiring projects and land with the strategy that either the land itself will become more valuable as this bull market continues, or you're going to even explore and drill those properties and bring the market more indication, more reassurance, bring the risk down from pure exploration to advancement, and then the options are there. You can spin this out, you can be taken over. There's so many things that can happen with exit strategies. What is the company going to do in the next 6 months to a year? Are you planning another placement? What's the situation with the cash balance sheet? How are investors going to look at this company? Because one of the things to understand is there aren't, there are few companies that are in your situation where you got the Rolodex between your team that spans the entire globe. I mean, honestly, you got to be hearing about every deal that comes up in the cobalt market right now, and you want to jump on anything that's juicy and ready to go. So I know you obviously have the capacity to raise funds, and you know the entire space here. What's the next move?
Sure. When Bob Cross and the guys founded this, Lior, they founded it early in the resurgence, the emerging cobalt bull market. And you mentioned earlier Bob's moniker as the millionaire maker in Canada and in Canadian mining circles. He didn't get that moniker by being late to situations. He got that moniker by being early and by being first. And when Bob and his associates named this company, I think they were very acute in calling it First Cobalt, because we have this big first mover advantage. By being first, we were able to act on opportunities, do due diligence, analyze deal flow before most people in the industry sensed the cobalt boom that was coming. In being first, we were able to acquire one of the most advanced stage cobalt projects in Canada via the acquisition of the former cobalt producer, the Keeley Frontier mine. At the same time, Bob's extensive network in Africa led us to this band of projects, which puts us now in the heart of the most important cobalt mining belt in the world. And these are advanced properties in that surface mineralization is known on all of these properties that we have just announced today. So these are very, very prospective, and it's due to Bob and his network that we were able to tie these up, along with the hard work of Trent Mell, Dr. Santaguida, his team in Africa. So it's very impressive what we will be doing over the next 6 months. We just completed a funding. We're well financed. We have very little in the way of commitments, so our hands aren't tied. We've got lots of flexibility. We'll be rapidly advancing the projects in Canada and in Africa concurrently, and timing couldn't be better because now the rest of the world has caught on to what Bob Cross and his associates saw very early, which is this cobalt bull market. And cobalt, the growth is starting to get explosive, and we're not running around now realizing that. We were there first, we were there early, and with that we've got a big running head start on so many of the other groups that just now want to become involved in the cobalt space.
Understood. Bryan, thank you very much for taking the time here.
Lior, thank you.